This is note taker 26 on echinoderms and arthropods. Continuing through our animal kingdom, we have previously talked about phylum Porifera, which were our sponges and the simplest of animals, phylum Cnidaria, which were our cnidarians like jellyfish, hydra, coral, and sea anemones. We've talked about 3 phyla of worms, Platyhelminthes, which are flatworms, Nematoda, which are roundworms, and Annelida, which are segmented worms. And we've talked about our phylum Mollusca, which are soft-bodied organisms like our snails, our slugs, things like that. Now, we're moving on now to our last 2 phyla of invertebrates, animals without backbones. The first one that we're going to talk about is phylum Echinodermata. On the wall in class, you will see that echino means spiny and dermis means skin. So our Echinodermata, one of the characteristics is that they're going to have spiny skin. Now it doesn't always mean that it's going to have sharp spines that are going to hurt you, but their skin will feel very bumpy and rough. Members of this group are going to include, in the picture below, you see a sea lily and a sand dollar. And on the next slide, you're going to see some other examples of echinoderms. Here we have a bristle star up in the top left corner. The bottom left is called a sea biscuit. The right side is a sea urchin. The top picture here is a sea cucumber, and the bottom picture is a sea star. With our echinoderms, in addition to having spiny skin, they are all going to have an internal skeleton. They're not going to have bones, but some of them will have some calcium plates inside to give them structure. They will have a 5-part body, a water vascular system, so their vascular system is going to differ from ours because ours moves blood around our body, theirs pumps water, and then they're going to have little structures called tube feet. Now with our echinoderms, some of them are capable of regenerating lost body parts, that means to regrow lost body parts, such as the sea star. And we talked about regeneration when we talked about our flatworms. Now with the internal skeleton, I already mentioned that it's made of little bony plates of calcium, and that does give them structure. Your water vascular system does carry water throughout the body, and that water is going to deliver nutrients from the food, and it will also deliver oxygen to the cells, and it will help remove wastes. In addition, it also helps the echinoderms move. The little tube feet that are on their underside are little suction cup-like structures, and they will change the water pressure in these tube feet to either suction onto something or to release. So they actually move around almost in a walking motion. And some of the echinoderms will even use these tube feet to help get food, like our sea star, which eats clams and oysters, mollusks, little bivalves. So what they'll do is they'll suction cup one arm on one side of the clam, one arm on the other side of the clam, and they will pry it open. And then the sea star will actually push its stomach out to surround the food and pull it back into its body. The top 2 pictures here show pictures of sea stars regenerating. The one on the left was an arm that was broken off, and it's actually regenerating a whole new body. That's the little part you see off to the left of the picture. The top right picture is showing you a sea star that lost 3 legs, and it's regenerating those 3 legs. The bottom picture is a close-up of the little tube feet on the bottom of the arm on one of the starfish. Our last phylum of invertebrates, and also our largest, are going to be our arthropods. Arthro means jointed, pod means foot, and these words can be found on the classroom wall. And members of this species are going to be lobsters, crabs, barnacles, centipedes, millipedes, spiders, and the group that makes it the largest group in the world is going to be your insects. Now there's 3 characteristics shared by all arthropods. they are all going to have an exoskeleton. And if you look on the word wall, exo means outer. And this exoskeleton is going to give them a rigid outer covering. And in class, I'm going to show you examples of exoskeletons that have been shed or molted, which means that the exoskeleton cannot grow. So as the arthropod grows inside, the exoskeleton splits open and they will crawl out. Now during this time, they're very vulnerable because they're very soft until their new exoskeleton hardens. So if you've ever heard of a soft shell crab is the exact same crab as a hard shell, but it molted its hard shell and it's nice and soft until the shell hardens back. There was an episode of SpongeBob where Mr. Krabs lost his shell, his exoskeleton, and he was all soft and gooey looking. The other two characteristics shared by all arthropods are a segmented body, so the body is in parts, and the last one, true to their name, being called arthropods, they all have jointed appendages. Now your appendages are going to be things like your antenna, your legs, and your tail. And their legs are going to be jointed. It's almost like they have a knee or an elbow on their leg. Arthropods also have an open circulatory system. Whereas our blood passes through blood vessels, they do not have vessels inside their body. So their heart just pumps the blood into open spaces throughout the body. And even though the blood carries nutrients from the food, it does not carry oxygen. So they are going to have, all the arthropods are going to have specialized respiratory organs. And 3 that they can choose from, and we're going to talk about what types of animals you can find each of these on. Some of them will have gills, some of them will have a structure called book lungs, and some of them are going to have a system of air tubes. And arthropods will all reproduce sexually, so there is no more asexual reproduction at this point. Here are examples of our respiratory organs. The top 2 pictures on the left show the bottom of a spider, and you can see where the arrows are pointing there for the book lungs. And then the drawn picture in the middle at the top shows you kind of why they call it a book lung. It's a like layered up tissue that looks like the pages in the book. And air will flow over those pieces of tissue, and specialized cells there will pull out oxygen and transport those around the body. The top left picture is pointing out the gills in a crab. And the bottom picture is going to show what air tubes look like, and they're going to be in our insect group. So you're going to have little holes on the outside of their body, and these are going to lead to a system of tubes on the inside of the body. So air just kind of flows through these tubes through their body, and cells will pull out oxygen as needed. So our book lungs, found primarily in your spider group. Gills are going to be found in our crustacean group, which is going to be our crabs, our lobsters, our shrimp, our barnacles. And our air tubes are going to be found primarily in our insect group. The first group of arthropods we're going to talk about is class Crustacea. And Crustacea, on the wall in the classroom, it means with a shell. So these guys are going to have a super thick exoskeleton that we're going to call a shell. They're going to have 2 pairs of antennae, and they're going to have mouth parts that are used for crushing and grinding food. Your crustaceans will include things like your lobsters, your crabs, your barnacles, and your shrimp. So below in the 2 pictures, on the left side is a fiddler crab, and that is a male. The male has 1 little claw that he uses for picking up food and putting the food in his mouth. The large claw serves 2 purposes: protection, and it's his way to get the ladies. The bigger the claw, that means the stronger the crab, and the ladies will choose them. The bottom right picture is a little ghost shrimp. The top left picture here are barnacles. The barnacle is the animal that lives inside of these little shells. And the bottom picture is a crayfish, which looks kind of like a little miniature lobster. Crayfish are more freshwater around here. Our lobsters would be saltwater. With our crustacean, the body is going to be divided into segments, and each segment will have a pair of appendages. So it might be the head would have a pair of antennae. Each body section might have a pair of legs. And our legs on the crustaceans can come in lots of different things. They can have claws, they can have walking legs, they can have swimming legs, and some of them will actually have all three. And I'm going to show you an example on a crab and a lobster in the classroom. Some crustaceans are actually able to regenerate lost body parts. There are some species of crabs that when they lose their claw will actually regrow another one. And your crustaceans are going to have to live in a watery environment because most of them are going to get their oxygen through using gills. Even your land-dwelling crustaceans, they need to live in a damp area because they also have gills. The next group of arthropods are going to be our centipedes and our millipedes. On the bottom of this page, you will see an example of a millipede. The difference between these two groups is that your centipedes will have one pair of legs, so 2 legs, for each body segment, and our centipedes are going to be carnivores. They're actually going to inject a venom through their little bites into their prey, and then that's hopefully going to stun or kill their prey so that they will then eat it. Millipedes, on the other hand, will have 2 pairs of legs on each body segment, and they are actually very shy creatures that prefer to live in underneath leaf matter because they feed off of plants. Millipedes are completely harmless to us, unless you put one in your mouth. I wouldn't suggest that. These pictures are 2 of our common centipedes that we have around here. They will bite you, and it will hurt. Our next group of arthropods are our arachnids, which are going to be our spiders, scorpions, ticks, and mites. Now with our arachnids, their body is going to have 2 parts. The front part is their head and chest combined, and the back part is going to be the abdomen. It doesn't matter what size the arachnid comes in, they will have 4 pairs of legs. That gives them 8 legs. And those legs will be attached to the head and chest portion of their body. Your spiders and scorpions are usually going to capture their prey. They are going to have a venom to help them out, or poison. Your ticks and mites are more parasitic. They are actually going to feed off of the blood and skin cells of whatever host cell that they are affecting. Your arachnids do get oxygen by either air tubes or book lungs. Your spiders are going to have book lungs. Here, top left is an example of a tarantula, which is a spider. Bottom right is a picture of a scorpion. Top left picture here is a close-up picture of a tick. And the bottom right picture is a magnified picture of dust mites. Our last group of arthropods, and by far the most numerous, are going to be our insects. Insects are going to have a body divided into 3 parts, and you can see this on the little balloon insects I have hanging from my ceiling. The parts, they have a head segment in the front, a chest segment in the center, and an abdomen at the back. And all of our insects are going to have 3 pairs of legs, that means 6 total, and they're going to be attached to the chest part, which is the center part of the body. Most of our insects have wings, although some are only adapted for short distances, like the grasshopper. If you've ever seen a grasshopper jump, you might hear a sound with it. That's its wings vibrating as it goes short distances. So you might see a grasshopper and it might jump from your yard and go to the neighbor's yard. But some of our insects are actually evolved wings for long distance flights. Bees can fly long distances. Butterflies can fly long distances. There are actually types of butterflies that actually migrate to Mexico. That's a very long distance away for a little butterfly. Now with our insects, they are going to get their oxygen through air tubes. So if you were to look at an insect underneath a dissecting microscope, you could kind of see the little openings down the side of their body. Now with our insects, they go through a very interesting growth process. We call this metamorphosis. To metamorphosize means to change. And depending on the insect, will depend on whether or not it is a complete metamorphosis or an incomplete metamorphosis. And I've got examples on the next two slides that will explain what these are. Incomplete metamorphosis, what the insect starts as when it hatches from the egg will completely change as it becomes an adult. So the two examples I put on here were a fly and a butterfly. When they first hatch from an egg, they're going to be a little larva. So it's in the fly, you're going to be called a maggot, and a caterpillar, you'd be called a, if you're a butterfly, you're going to be called a caterpillar. So when they first hatch from the egg, they look almost worm-like. But as they go through their metamorphosis and develop, the caterpillar will have a chrysalis stage, which he'll actually form the chrysalis, which hangs on a tree or whatever he attaches it to. And then when that chrysalis bursts open, the adult that emerges looks completely different. Then you'll have the adult butterfly. The fly actually goes into a hard pupal state, which is like a hard case, very similar to the chrysalis of a butterfly. And when that breaks open, the adult that climbs out will actually look like an adult fly. So a good way to remember is complete metamorphosis. The insect completely changes from baby to adult. The other type of metamorphosis is called incomplete or gradual. And with this one, when the insect hatches from the egg, they actually look like a little miniature version, an underdeveloped one, but they look like a little miniature version of the adult. So as they go through their growth stages, they're getting bigger, but also they're getting more developed and more complex until they become their adult, their whole adult shape. Please do not forget to answer the questions in the assessment following this note taker.